Holden's hidden patrol cars. They said only Ford gave the cops their fastest cars. They were wrong. Holden did it too, quietly, out of sight and without leaving much evidence behind. In the shadows of Bathurst glory, a handful of Tiranas were prepared for a very different race. The race to catch Ford's fastest Falcons. They wore no stripes, no race numbers, just police badges and blue light. This is the shocking truth behind Holden's secret police Tiranas. The 1970s begin, a nation obsessed with speed. Australia in the early 1970s was addicted to horsepower. Every Sunday, the country tuned into Mount Panorama. Falcon GTHOs, Monaros, and Chargers battled for pride and brand loyalty. And when Peter Brock crossed the line in 1972, his little LJ Tirana XU1 humbled Ford's mighty Phase 3. It was a turning point, proof that a lightweight 6 could beat the biggest V8s. Police departments noticed. Highway patrol units were struggling to keep up with a new generation of high-performance streetcars. Their workhorse Holden Kingswoods were tough but slow. They needed something quicker, more agile, a car that could run down offenders before they disappeared over the horizon. In secret meetings between fleet managers and Holden executives, the idea was born. If Ford could slip GT hardware into plain Falcon 500s, maybe Holden could do the same with a Tirana. The XU1 experiment, the lightweight Interceptor, the LJ Tirana GTR XU1 was already a legend. Triple carburetors, a high-compression 186.6 and a rally-tuned suspension setup. It was small, loud, and quick. 0 to 100 in just 7.5 seconds. Serious speed for 1972. According to old fleet paperwork and eyewitness accounts from retired officers, a handful of XU1s were quietly evaluated by New South Wales and Queensland Highway Patrol. They weren't part of any official press release. No publicity, no badges saying GTR. Just lightweight interceptors with a radio, a siren, and a tough clutch. In urban pursuits, they were almost untouchable. They could weave through traffic, dart into alleyways, and accelerate like a bullet out of corners. Officers said the Tirana felt alive, like a go-kart with a badge. But there was a problem. It was too raw. No air conditioning, no power steering, no boot space for equipment. In a long chase, the car was as much a test of the driver as the criminal. Still, the XU1 had proved a point. Holden could build a pursuit car capable of hunting down a Falcon, and it wouldn't be the last time they tried. The L-34. Bathurst power goes undercover. After the supercar scare in 1972, Ford's Phase 4 was dead and muscle cars were a political liability. But by 1974, Holden had found a loophole. Homologate a race car for the road without calling it a supercar. The result was the LH Tirana L-34. 5-liter V8, ported heads, big valves, dual springs, solid cam, and Bathurst credentials written all over it. On paper, it made 308 horsepower, but everyone knew that was a lie. In Holden's engineering department, rumors spread that a few L-34s were earmarked for fleet evaluation. Unofficial testing, of course, nothing in writing. Some say HDT prepared a couple for state police units as demonstrators, fitted with calibrated speedos and HD cooling systems. Whether those cars were ever sworn in for service is still debated, but stories persist. Old mechanics talk about pulling apart a mystery L-34 in government colors. Retired officers recall a Tirana pursuit car that went like hell but was impossible to keep cool. If the XU1 was the nimble knife, the L-34 was the sledgehammer. Too loud, too hot, too fast for official duty. But for a moment, Holden's racing blood flowed through a police uniform. The A9X legend. Too good for the job. By 1977, the Tirana A9X had become Holden's ultimate weapon. A 308 V8 with a Borg Warner diff, 4-wheel discs, and race-bred aerodynamics. It won Bathurst so easily that commentators called it a one-make race. But what most people don't know is that Holden demonstrated the A9X to several state fleets. It was never officially adopted. Too expensive, too rare. But the idea was floated. Imagine a black or white A9X sedan with a police radio where the passenger seat should be, ready to chase down falcons on the open road. Some say one demo car was loaned to Victoria Police for testing. Others believe it was a Holden PR stunt that never went further than a photo shoot. The truth is murky, but every legend needs mystery. If the police had taken the A9X, it would have been the fastest pursuit car Australia had ever seen. But it was too precious to risk in service, and by the time the Commodore arrived, the Torana's era was over. The decline, from muscle to management. The 1980s brought a new reality. Petrol prices rose, insurance spiked, and fleet budgets tightened. Holden retired the Torana nameplate and introduced the VB Commodore. Smaller, simpler, more corporate. For police fleets, that made sense. They needed reliability and range, not Bathurst bragging rights. The Commodore became the new standard issue. Safe, predictable, easy to service. But for those who remembered the XU1 and L34, something had changed. The roar was gone. The danger, the excitement, all replaced by policy and paperwork. Still, in some regional stations, old Toranas lingered on for training or plainclothes duties. Rusty, rough, but still capable of a quick burst when needed. By the time the VL Turbo arrived in the mid-80s, Australia's police had moved on, but they owed a lot to the little cars that came before. The myth and the evidence. Did they really exist? Ask 10 people if there were police Toranas and you'll get 10 different answers. Some swear they saw one on the Hume Highway in 1975. White, no badges, blue lights in the grille. Others say they worked on them in fleet garages, pulling off the panels and finding HDT part numbers. But go looking for paper trails and you find almost nothing. No build records, no press photos, no fleet announcements. It makes sense. After the supercar scare, Holden couldn't be seen supplying racing cars to the police. So if it happened, and many believe it did, it was done quietly, under special fleet orders and test programs that were never publicly acknowledged. Every now and then, a car surfaces. A Torana with odd fleet stamps, a calibrated speedometer, a police-issue radio mount hidden under the dash. Little clues that suggest these cars weren't just sold to ordinary drivers. In the absence of proof, the myth only grows stronger. And maybe that's the point. Some secrets are too good to confirm. The legacy, Holden's hidden chapter. Holden's secret police Toranas are more than a story about cars. They're a symbol of a time when Australian manufacturers weren't afraid to push the limits. The XU1 proved a six-cylinder could beat V8s. The L34 showed Holden could fight Ford on power and win. The A9X demonstrated engineering so good it was too fast for its own future. Together, they represent a chapter in law enforcement and motoring history that was never meant to be written down, just remembered. When you see a Torana on the road today, shiny paint, big cam, rising rev needle, think about the few that never made it to Bathurst. The ones that chased speeders instead of trophies. The ones that served the law by breaking every rule of bureaucracy and common sense. They were the cars that blurred the line between racer and patrol car, between law and legend. Epilogue, the last of the Torana enforcers. By the time the Torana name disappeared in 1979, Australia had changed. The muscle era was over and the future belonged to commuters, not cowboys. But somewhere in a barn or a garage out back, a faded Torana sits with holes in its roof where a radio once was. The paint is dull, the engine silent, and yet under the dust it still carries the DNA of Australia's wildest era, when Bathurst engineering met blue lights and badges. Maybe those cars were only legends. Maybe they were real. But one thing is certain. If you ever saw a Torana in your mirror during the 70s, you hoped it was just another rev head. Because if it was one of Holden's secret police cars, you weren't getting away.